Okay.
Tim's going to be helping
Hey,
us
Todd, how
out.
are you? I'm good. Good, thanks.
All right, so Todd, I think we're going to make this really, really easy, hopefully for you. Um,
Okay.
I my sense is this article or your piece of this will mostly be about macro, right? And the importance of macro. I think a lot of it, Todd, you can just pull from your talking points from your roadshow last fall. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I've got some kind of open-ended questions that we can ask. I do not expect you to be the expert on this grant program or the services available. We can write that up and kind of stick it at the end of the article. For more information, here's where you go to
Sure.
enroll, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
picture it as if we're a couple of crazy Ohio physicians, and we've got
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity to speak with Mr. Todd Baker and get your perspective on macro and what we should be doing. So,
Right.
with that as kind of the background, what is your perspective on macro? I mean, where do you see Ohio physicians currently with their acceptance, adoptance?
Sure.
Um, Maybe we could start there.
Yeah. I think that as we sit in May of 2017, I still believe that there is, and so we've been talking about macro for 2 years now almost, and certainly a year and a half. And where I think physicians are sort of in three different places. I think there's a group of physicians who, and this goes for sort of smaller practices and larger practices. There's a group who I would not use the word embrace, but who have understood that they want to try to maximize the benefit. So I don't think it gets into do you agree with it or not? Do you think it's good or not? They have addressed the reality that it is here and it is something that we need to try to be successful at. And I think those folks have dug in a little bit, have done a little bit of work, and particularly if they have already been participating in other quality programs, they have quickly discovered that they can probably adapt to what is required by MACRA through MIPS in a relatively easy fashion. So if they have been participating with PQRS and meaningful use and have done it in a pretty successful way, they feel they are equipped to be successful in this sort of new macro world, or they are less nervous or less hesitant about the process. So what percentage of folks that is, I'm not sure, but I think there are those now who have, I don't know 100% figured it out, but who have made the case internally that, yes, I think we can make this work. There's a second group of physicians in Ohio who maybe have dabbled in quality performance from a Medicare standpoint up to this point, but really not been ultra focused on it, and who are really nervous and really unsure as to how this will all affect them, but they have begun to look at it and try to understand it. So they have at least made the beginnings of a commitment to figure out what they have to do, and perhaps even started to some level with reporting. So they don't have a high degree, they don't have confidence like the first group, but they are beginning to make an entree into trying to figure things out. And then there's a third bucket, which is they haven't really participated much in any quality program up to this point, and they are pretty insistent and they haven't really begun to do anything in terms of preparing themselves for MIPS, and may even be, sort of making the decision, well, I'll just take the hit and see where things go from there. What I can't tell you is, what percentage of the population is in each one of those buckets. But I do think a consistent theme over all of these, and that's where I think there's an opportunity with the grant, is that no matter how much help I get with this at the front end, in terms of general understanding and looking at my what I have to do for my individual specialty or whatever it might be, the one thing I consistently hear from folks is, I've done these things, but how do I know where I stand? Or where will I know how I'm doing, or if I'm beginning to do it correctly, or am I investing my resources internally within my practice, getting staff to do the right things? I think what this grant hopefully will be able to do is provide those practices, particularly the smaller practices, with a check-in point with some third-party voice that will be able to help them with questions, with, okay, do I make a left turn or a right turn here? How fast do I go? What road do I pick? There's sort of that mentoring opportunity here, not with someone in your office, obviously, but whoever is put in charge in these small offices, a resource to go to help them navigate. And what I think hopefully the beauty of it will be is that regardless of which one of those three buckets you're in, whether you are feeling pretty good, you may have, you're an A student, but you still have to do a little homework or ask the teacher a question occasionally to make sure you maintain your A. Or you're a C student and you want to work yourself up to a B or an A. You're certainly going to use the teacher and ask some questions to do that. And then if you're not even in the classroom, you have an opportunity to, at a minimum, maybe audit a class to begin to see what it is that I need to do to actually think about it. So that's sort of at the 25,000-foot level, I think, where I see where practices are in their workflow, in their mindset, as they look at what do I need to do to prepare. There's rarely a place I go now in Ohio, as opposed to a year and a half ago, where I say, have you heard of MIPS? Have you heard of MACRA? Have you heard of alternative payment models? And almost every hand at least goes up that there is a general awareness. A year and a half ago, when I asked that question, if it's an audience of 50, 5 hands might have gone up, 10 hands at most. Now, if I'm in an audience of 50, 45 hands go up. So there clearly is a awareness of there is something different out there, and I think where we are as a state is we have significant differences in the level of preparedness and commitment to preparedness, and so any resources we can bring to bear, regardless of where you are in that journey, to help with that preparedness, I think is really vital. And again, I can't emphasize enough, that doesn't mean that any of them agree that this will actually be helpful for patient care and will be helpful for the system. I don't think any physicians who even think they're 100% on top of it are ones that are out waving the MACRA banner, right? I mean, I don't think they're champions of the cause. They just realize, okay, here are the new rules of engagement. I'm going to try to be as successful as I can. Doing that is not an acknowledgement that you agree that it is a great thing to do.
Excellent, excellent. Another question, that's fantastic, Todd. Is there anything you can say specific to smaller, given that this grant is really around rural, smaller practices?
Sure.
Any comments or thoughts around specific challenges or problems facing the small rural practice who perhaps is not a part of a bigger group
Right.
or health system?
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. So the biggest challenge that the smaller practices have, particularly the smaller rural practices, but even urban practices, but particularly the smaller rural ones, is resource allocation. Right. So this is a something new that requires some people power and brain power to make sure that you are doing everything correctly, you are inputting things correctly, you are kind of meeting all of the requirements. That takes a level of resource commitment either from the clinician or the staff or a combination thereof. And the challenge that these smaller practices have is that they don't have that resource. They don't have any excess administrative resource. Anybody who's in the practice, and let's say it's a solo or two-person practice in rural family practice in rural Ohio, or one-person specialist, is you probably got a doc and 3 or 4 staff people. They are maxed to the hilt in terms of what they are facing to get through each day, the 40 or 50 or 60 or whatever number of patients they have to take care of that day. And there's not a lot of excess time to devote to, well, what do I need to do moving forward versus what do I need to do to get through this day, see the patients, submit the claims, get paid, so on and so forth. So I think what this grant hopefully does is it provides, again, a resource that those practices can go to without a major resource investment in the office, either in terms of dollars or people that they don't have. Bringing in resources from the outside and having someone help with that. This allows at least an initial entree point to say, okay, here's some quick and dirty of what I need to do. How do I do that quickly with the least amount of resource involved? And how do I do a quick check-in to know whether or not I'm on the right path or not? I think this grant, particularly for those practices, in the least intrusive way possible, provides that opportunity and resource for those practices. So in a situation, in most of those situations, those practices have zero additional capacity, both in terms of dollars and people, and this allows at least a check-in, a quick resource opportunity to make sure, again, going back to those 3 buckets, and most folks in smaller practices are probably in either the second or third, is to at least either get me on the right path, or if I've started to go down, get a quick understanding of if I'm making the right decision. So I think from that standpoint, given where most of them are, it's a helpful tool to have available without a huge amount of resource, either in terms of time or dollars, that one has to invest.
Fantastic. I think just one final question, Todd, is around the time We're in 2017, and what does that mean for practices with respect to, the activities actually begin to really matter? Can you talk to that a little bit? Sort of the time is now, you know.
Right. So the time is now, but at least in this first year, there is an opportunity for still being able to get into the game without being penalized. Do the minimum. So even though we're in May, there is still time for the clock certainly is ticking, but it's not time to throw your hands up and say, well, I missed the boat. I think certainly there's still an opportunity with the last 6 months of this year, and you do have through the first couple months of 18 to report 17 data. So I do think there is an urgency. There is no question there is an urgency. But the message now, or at least in the next couple months, is, look, you still have a chance to do enough without a huge amount of work to meet what you need to do for 2017. So it's one of those ones where it's a little bit of a tricky messaging, right? You don't want to say the house is completely on fire, run out and give up, but you also want to be able to create a sense of urgency. And I think CMS has really provided that opportunity by the kind of phase-in opportunity in 17, where you can report for short periods of time for not all of the measures and still get away with not facing a penalty. So I think the message, particularly for those smaller practices, is don't give up on 17 because you haven't done anything yet and think that you've missed the boat. There's still a chance, and if you get some things done in the last 6 months of the year, you still have an opportunity to come out okay at the back end in 2019.
Excellent. Okay, so we got, I don't know, maybe like 6 minutes left. Tim
Okay.
or Allison, do you have any final questions? Or Todd, if you've got other ideas that you wanted to share.
I did have one quick question for the whole group. Maybe Bill, partially you, and Todd, I'm sure it's you as well. If I'm a small rural physician in Ohio, it's Friday. So in my, let's say, Monday morning at 8, I always have a short informal staff meeting. What should I talk with my office manager and or billing person, if I'm lucky enough to have 2 administrative people? What should I talk to them about Monday morning about, let's do this next, starting this week? What do we do? Do we call Medical Advantage Group? Do we log into a CMS portal? What should we do next?
Right. I think the first thing that I would do is that I think the CMS portal is a really good starting place. As you bring that up, it is probably, as I've been going around talking for the last 6 to 9 months, what they've developed for the quality payment program is as good as they've done. It is graphical. It is fairly user-friendly. And I guess I would go back to, are you in the first, second, or third bucket, right? If you're in the third bucket and you're having that Monday morning meeting, yeah, you're really just starting from scratch, and let's get a quick and dirty of, okay, what's the minimum? That conversation should be, what's the minimum we have to do to avoid getting penalized this year? That if you've done nothing at this point, what is the minimum I would need to do to avoid penalty? And let's start with that, and that would be the Monday morning conversation. For those who are in the first or second bucket, I think the conversation is, what do we need to do where we can look at where we can qualify for additional revenue? and that opportunity is still certainly there. And I think that conversation is, what resources do we need to put into this? And then what is our expected return if we are successful? And those are some things, particularly if you're in a rural area, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, that I believe that the grant portal will provide some ways to do some of those assessments in terms of, okay, if I have X amount of Medicare business and I do qualify for a 4% increase, that's going to amount to $20,000 for my practice, $50,000 for my practice, whatever that might be. And so, it's important that we dedicate X amount of time to it. So I do think it depends upon, that Monday morning conversation depends a little bit upon which bucket you're in and where you are in the journey.
Sure, that makes sense. Got it. And Bill, I would tag that real quickly by saying, from a marketing communication standpoint, Bill, what would you see as your call to action then to pursue that? Your call to action at all to contact OSMA, contact Medical Advantage Group? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I think
So we have.
Oh, go ahead.
We have, and we can provide some resources to you, but there's actually, through the grant, there's a great link people can go to, and it's the QPP Resource Center, so they actually go straight there, and then those 3 buckets that Todd was sort of talking about, the website actually helps that they have a little quiz, and it helps get you sorted out into which group you're actually in, how ready you are, what kind of resources you have. And then based on that, it sort of sorts you into a level of help that you're going to get. So everybody gets access to the website and the free resources there. But if you're really struggling, really need a lot of help, there's sort of additional levels of support that you can get. So the best thing that we're telling people right now is just to go straight into that website and kind of get yourself sorted out, see what help you need, and then be able to get connected with resources.
Gotcha. That rounds out a picture quite well between those two things. So thanks.
Yeah. All right, Todd, I know you're a very busy guy.
Okay.
We really appreciate you taking the time.
Not a problem. I'm always happy to help. Always happy to help.
Okay. Thank you very
much.
much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.